Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, "I see you," who nobody actually sees. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
Picture Jimmy Kimmel casually delivering dad jokes, just minding his own business when out of nowhere Greg Gutfeld crash lands into the comedy scene like a caffeinated raccoon with a vendetta and a hot mic. What starts as light late-night banter quickly turns into a comedic cage match. Gutfeld doesn't just roast Kimmel, he launches him into the stratosphere, sarcasm blazing like rocket fuel. Imagine a clown car bursting into flames in slow motion, chaotic, hilarious, and impossible to look away. This roast doesn't just burn, it leaves emotional skid marks. Buckle up.
The worst part about this whole thing is that his presidency is ripe for mockery and ridicule and even gentle humor if you like him. Well, I mean, just Hunter Biden alone, in the recent stuff, I mean, you could go on forever. But Kimmel has abdicated his role of a comedian. He's now just a political hack. Which I'm grateful for because then I get the turf to myself. I'm not a comedian, but I just filled the gap. That's why I'm beating him every night because he sat there with that guy and basically he spoon-fed him like he was a dementia patient at a restaurant.
It all began with one of those classic Greg Gutfeld moments. He looked up from his desk, scanned the late-night lineup, and casually asked, "Is Jimmy Kimmel still pretending he's funny?" And just like that, comedy had its newest punching bag. Gutfeld has this unnerving talent for pointing out the obvious and actually saying it out loud, a risky move in an industry where groupthink often gets mistaken for originality.
Kimmel actually said in that thing that, the people who voted for Trump, they just don't know what they've done. They don't realize how badly they've hurt themselves. And so it's not a concern for others that you're seeing with this. It's an expression of ego. That they are smarter than all of these people. And as always, when you're a slave to your ego, it's always somebody else's fault. And therefore, they cannot see their own errors, their own mistakes. If you are open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their ego.
Kimmel, once the loud, proud co-host of The Man Show, a beer-soaked celebration of trampolines and testosterone, now wraps himself in the velvet robes of virtue, delivering teary-eyed monologues about climate change and social justice. The transformation? Less glow-up, more system error. Gutfeld didn't just take a jab, he built an entire sarcasm factory and ran Kimmel's legacy through the assembly line.
Kimmel cries about cancel culture. Kennedy, in a recent interview, Jimmy Kimmel blames liberal cancel culture, of all things, and their perpetual manufactured outrage for helping get Trump reelected. He specifically talked about their attacks on comedians. Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel fought back tears while falsely claiming Donald Trump attacked LA firefighters, prompting the LA Fire Department to attach a hose to Jimmy's face.
While Kimmel stumbles through cue cards loaded with political takes that sound like they were cribbed from a 17-year-old AP government student trying to impress his crush, Gutfeld delivers his comedy sharp, unfiltered, and with the gleeful precision of a caffeine-fueled chainsaw. Kimmel's transformation into a moralizing late-night televangelist isn't so much a career pivot as it is a collective national eye roll. This is the same guy who built a career on fart jokes now auditioning to be America's conscience.
True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld's been quietly building a comedy empire the old-fashioned way by actually being funny. It'd be tragic if it weren't so wildly entertaining. His takedown of Kimmel wasn't some throwaway one-liner, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of mockery. Picture someone slowly inflating a balloon, only to have it popped by a pin forged from pure logic and sparkling sarcasm. That's what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. It started with Gutfeld highlighting the glaring hypocrisy that practically seeps from Kimmel's pores. This is the same guy whose early comedy wouldn't survive 5 minutes in today's cancel culture, now strutting around like he single-handedly discovered compassion. Gutfeld didn't even need to spell it out, the irony did all the heavy lifting. Kimmel's rebranding saga could be used in marketing courses as a cautionary tale. What not to do when you used to be fun. As Gutfeld kept swinging, the audience began to remember back when Kimmel had energy, bite, and something that vaguely resembled originality. Now he's the human embodiment of lukewarm tofu, bland, self-satisfied, and trying way too hard to be good for you.
Terrible night for everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Oh. You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it! You big Now...
Meanwhile, over on Gutfeld, things are playing out a little differently, like, say, people actually laughing. Not out of obligation, not to flash their political team colors, but because the jokes land. Gutfeld has become the comedic equivalent of a predator drone. He doesn't just criticize, he obliterates. When he saw Kimmel's latest monologue, he didn't respond with outrage, he answered with mockery so sharp it could double as brain surgery. It wasn't loud, it was precise. It didn't scream. It smirked, because really when someone opens their show sobbing over the state of the world and closes with a half-baked joke about a trending hashtag, what's left to do but laugh? And here's the kicker, ratings don't lie. While Kimmel's numbers circle the drain like the final flush of a regrettable gas station burrito, Gutfeld has pulled off the unthinkable. He made late-night fun again. He didn't follow the Hollywood playbook of preach, laugh, cry, repeat. He tossed it out and doubled down on what actually keeps viewers watching. Humor. Real, unfiltered, punch-you-in-the-face funny. Sure, the critics say Gutfeld isn't your traditional late-night host, but maybe that's exactly the point. Traditional late night has turned into a tepid stew of smug talking points served by men in suits who haven't told a truly funny joke since the Obama years. Gutfeld didn't try to revive that formula, he torched it and built something that actually makes people laugh.
But the killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a penis.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld strolls in, drops a few unfiltered truth bombs, and imagine this actually gets people to laugh. It's almost unfair. He didn't just take apart Kimmel's show. He went after the whole ecosystem that props up someone like Kimmel, where virtue signaling is packaged and sold as primetime entertainment. Gutfeld mocked the automatic Hollywood applause breaks, the kind that erupt for even the most lukewarm takes. He skewered the idea that lecturing your audience is somehow the same as connecting with them. And most importantly, he reminded everyone that comedy isn't supposed to come stapled to a moral invoice. Now let's talk about Kimmel's favorite hobby, hypocrisy. Oh, Jimmy, the guy who built his brand on edgy sketches and frat boy antics, now flinches at the slightest whiff of a politically incorrect joke. It's like watching a lion scold the savannah about the ethics of veganism. You can almost hear Gutfeld's internal monologue. So let me get this straight. Jimmy, you cashed in on objectifying women, offensive gags, and drunk guy humor. And now you're the moral compass of late night adorable. And that's the heart of Gutfeld's roast. Kimmel isn't evolving, he's retreating. Hiding behind a script of curated compassion and applause-ready melancholy. It's not growth, it's camouflage. A performance within a performance, all wrapped in the blandest beige wrapping paper imaginable.
Few names to add. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the town crier. All outlets ignoring Biden's revolving door of gas. His constant forgetfulness, weird rambling speeches being let off stage. All the while you told us there's nothing to see here. Meanwhile, any parent can see this face means you gotta change a diaper.
Gutfeld, on the other hand, is flat out allergic to beige. His comedy is a riot of technicolor chaos, and he wears it like a badge of honor. He's not there to impress the media elite, and he's certainly not auditioning for Twitter clout. He just tells jokes, imagine that. In 2025, the most subversive thing you can do on late-night TV is actually try to be funny. At this point, the comparison is almost cruel. One host delivers nightly TED talks wrapped in forced chuckles. The other runs a comedy clinic powered by irreverence, wit, and zero concern for Hollywood approval. Kimmel's show feels like it was written by a PR committee in a WeWork. Gutfeld's show feels like what happens when you stop caring about Met Gala invites and just let it rip. And here's the kicker. Greg didn't need Kimmel in the room to obliterate him. That's the elegance of a monologue with teeth. Gutfeld didn't debate Jimmy. He didn't respond to him. He dismantled the idea of Jimmy, the walking punchline that is the modern late-night host who traded comedy for sanctimony and then acted surprised when the laughs stopped. And just when you think Gutfeld might ease up, he rolls out the greatest hits of Jimmy Kimmel's career, what can only be described as the hypocrisy mixtape no one asked for but absolutely needed. Gutfeld practically gift-wrapped it with a bow of biting sarcasm, delivering each jab with the finesse of a caffeinated surgeon armed with a chainsaw. Because nothing says moral authority quite like the guy who once hosted the Man Show where women bounced on trampolines while he grunted into the camera, now wagging his finger at the world, like the Dalai Lama in a designer blazer.
Dana, I'll start with you. It was a terrible night for women. Trump won more women. He won the popular vote. What are these people moaning about?
I don't know. I mean, today Brian Stelter tweeted that there was a talent agent who told him that a lot of members of the media are questioning whether they have it in them to cover another Trump cycle. And then they wonder why the working class is like, guys, you are so out of touch with what real work is. And also, they didn't really cover the Biden administration. They didn't cover the border.
Gutfeld didn't have to dig deep. Kimmel's early comedy is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet of everything he now pretends to condemn. Crude jokes, check. Mocking accents, check. Skits that aged worse than unrefrigerated seafood, triple check. And while Kimmel would love for everyone to memory hold those moments, Gutfeld showed up with the receipts laminated, color-coded, and ready for prime time. It's not every day you see someone try to pose as the moral compass of America after once donning blackface to impersonate Karl Malone. But hey, who's keeping track? Oh right, Gutfeld is, loudly and with commercial breaks. Then there's Kimmel's most curious pastime, crying on national television, because nothing screams serious thought leader quite like tearing up mid-monologue over a piece of legislation he probably read about in a tweet. Meanwhile, when it comes to actual cultural decay, Kimmel reacts with all the urgency of a man mildly inconvenienced by a lukewarm latte. Gutfeld didn't miss a beat, turning that contradiction into confetti. His signature burn, Kimmel cries more than my toddler at nap time and with less dignity. A punchline so cold, it gave Kimmel's ratings frostbite. But Gutfeld wasn't finished. With one last savage swipe, he summed it all up. Kimmel is the comedy equivalent of a Prius with a megaphone, quiet, smug, and completely useless in a real race.
Though these fellows are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it, that's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing World's Sexiest Man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway or have to buy groceries.
Translation: Kimmel's got all the sanctimony of a self-help podcast host, minus the help, minus the insight, and definitely minus the audience retention. Watching him lecture America, it's like being scolded by your dentist for not flossing while they're housing a Twinkie mid-cleaning. But here's where Gutfeld shines, not just in the mockery, but in the method. He doesn't toss out lazy jabs or half-baked punchlines. No, Greg's the roast master general of calling out the obvious truths that everyone else is too scared, too polite, or too canceled to say. He doesn't punch down. He punches through the performance, through the hypocrisy, and comes out the other side with a martini in one hand and a smirk in the other. That's what makes Gutfeld lethal. He thinks, he writes, he aims. It's not hot air, it's a 5-course burn, served with dessert and a comedy toothpick. His takedowns don't land because they're cruel. They land because they're correct. Meanwhile, Kimmel doles out soft applause lines to his studio audience like a dad trying to stay relevant at Thanksgiving dinner. He's become the human version of a clap, if you agree, sign. Where Gutfeld makes you laugh and question the absurdity of modern discourse, Kimmel makes you feel like you've been dragged into a school assembly hosted by a guidance counselor nursing a years-old Twitter grudge. Satire, when it's done right, cuts clean and sharp. Satire, when it's done woke, is just an HR-approved nap. And Gutfeld? He's not napping, he's wide awake, caffeinated and roasting Kimmel like a marshmallow with a superiority complex. The public noticed. Comments rolled in praising Gutfeld for saying what everyone was thinking, but what no one on Kimmel's writing staff would dare whisper. Late-night TV wasn't just dull, it was broken. And Greg, armed with razor wit and just enough petty to keep it fun, showed up with duct tape and a flamethrower.
Up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their egos. It's true in the media. It's actually, it's true among the never Trumper Republicans. If you look at the sourpusses, it's an internal emotional feeling that why him, Trump, and not me? Whether it's like, I don't know, Bill Kristol or Jonah Goldberg. It's like, these are guys that were generally normal. And then their egos just kind of like, they just took it hard.
Let's not forget, while Kimmel's busy clutching his pearls and sobbing into his desk about the state of the nation, Gutfeld is casually winning the ratings game. No pandering, no pretension, just showing up and being genuinely funny. Novel idea, right? The late-night landscape has turned into a graveyard of punchlines that died in development, and Kimmel wanders through it like a grief counselor for jokes that never stood a chance. Meanwhile, Gutfeld throws a party right on the tombstones and brings a kazoo. Gutfeld's takedown wasn't just personal, it was structural. He shined a spotlight on everything wrong with modern late night. The self-importance, the audience as props, the notion that a celebrity monologue can replace actual civic discourse. It was the kind of mockery that makes you laugh, then think, then laugh even harder. And here's the final jab. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't even seem to enjoy being funny anymore. Every episode feels like a community service sentence for past comedic sins. The jokes are obligatory, the laughter strained, and the applause signs probably working overtime. Gutfeld. He's having the time of his life. He's the kid in class who realized the teacher isn't grading homework, so he writes a rap about the War of 1812 and still aces the test. Chaotic, clever, and most importantly, free. That's what terrifies guys like Kimmel. You can't script authenticity. So no, there was no dramatic face-off, no debate, no response from Kimmel because frankly, he can't afford one. You can't clap back when you've been turned into the punchline. Gutfeld didn't need Kimmel to lose his cool, he just needed him to keep doing what he's been doing for years, pretending he's still relevant. The truth? Gutfeld destroyed Kimmel by being everything Kimmel used to be and then some. Funny, bold, sharp, fearless. And he did it without ever raising his voice. Because when the joke hits that hard, volume isn't needed, you just need timing. And Greg Gutfeld's timing impeccable. Just ask Jimmy Kimmel. Well, maybe not, he's probably still recovering from the roast that ended his credibility faster than a canceled sitcom. By week's end, Kimmel was still hosting, still reading his monologue, and still pretending the laughter wasn't echoing off the walls like a haunted comedy club. Meanwhile, Gutfeld was already planning his next roast, probably over a strong coffee and an even stronger sense of humor. Because when your competition is giving TED talks during comedy hour, all you have to do to win is tell a joke, preferably one without a lecture or a guilt trip. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Greg Gutfeld turned Jimmy Kimmel from a late-night host into a daytime cautionary tale. No debate, no response, just pure glorious comedic carnage.